And good afternoon, Easton, and welcome to the Rabbi's Roundtable. I'm Rabbi Peter Hyman, Rabbi at Temple B'nai Israel, and it's always a pleasure to have you at the Rabbi's Roundtable. Have an interesting, I think, informative, and I think rather an important couple of topics to deal with today. My first guest is no stranger to the Rabbi's Roundtable, Bishop Joel Johnson. As you know, many of you know, Joel is the retired bishop of the Anglican Diocese of the Chesapeake and is currently the chief visionary officer for the Oaks of Mamre Library and Graduate Center. Bishop Johnson.
Good to be here, Peter.
Thank you. We're going to do a couple of things. This is the Tuesday before Passover, and in Jewish tradition, it is customary to not have any leavened food. That means food that has been risen. Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
That you make
right.
with yeast.
Right.
This is biblical. It comes from the book of Exodus, where it says, "You shall have no leaven. There shall be no leavening found in your homes, in your tents, wherever, in your cities." And for the last 10 years.
10 years it has been.
I know, it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
I as operating as the chief representative of the Jewish community, certainly in Talbot County, I have sold on behalf of everybody who might care about this, all the leaven to the good bishop. There is a document, and while this is somewhat cutesy, we've always taken it seriously.
Yes, we do.
And it says that basically the undersigned, that's myself and the good bishop, we have entered into an agreement, and once this document is signed, all of the leavening, which is in Hebrew called chametz, which is not permissible during the week of Passover, is now owned by you.
That's right. Lock, stock, and barrel.
Lock, stock, and barrel. Crumb and
That's
crust
right.
as well.
That's right.
And we sell the entire lot for the grand sum of
$1.
There you go.
And here it is.
So the dollar has been passed, and I, as the rabbi, sign here. And Bishop Johnson becomes signatory to this year's sale of chametz.
It is an honor, sir.
It is a pleasure. Thank you. We are now
Unleavened.
We are now unleavened.
Right.
Exactly.
And tell people I'll be coming over to their houses to pick it up.
Oh, good. I'll make sure they know. That doesn't happen. Don't worry. He's only teasing. But it is the holiday season is coming up. Passover and Easter always fall sometimes closer, sometimes a little farther apart. But it's an important time. It's a theologically significant time. Why don't you talk a little bit about Easter for a second, and we'll wrap this with a discussion on Passover.
Well, right now we are in the midst of Holy Week, which is the week of ceremonies leading up to Good Friday, which is the crucifixion of Jesus, and Holy Saturday and Easter Sunday, celebrating the resurrection of Jesus, and then also his exposure of himself to his earliest followers, of his still being physically, mortally alive with them. And so it's a stunning week, and the ceremonies, the liturgies of Holy Week are very beautiful. I've always been moved throughout my whole life long, especially with the ceremonies of Holy Thursday or Maundy Thursday, with the washing of the feet, with the cleansing of the altar in all of the churches. And as a matter of fact, on Maundy Thursday, we almost have our own chametz ceremony, in which the Blessed Sacrament of the Lord's body is removed, physically removed from the church proper, and is taken to a place of special repose, so that in it we also have our own sort of ceremony of unleavening, you might say.
Sure.
So at any rate, it's a very beautiful, a very special time for us. Of course, a lot of it has become lost with Easter bunnies and extravaganzas, which are fun for the kids, and,
Yes.
I admire that, I guess. But of course, the moral message becomes lost, even for those who don't particularly practice any religion whatsoever.
And the bunnies and the Easter eggs have their parallel at the Passover Seder, the Passover meal,
Sure.
because we have a number of what I would consider pedagogic devices
Yeah.
built into the Seder ceremony, specifically done to keep the attention of the kids, because it says, again, biblically, it says, you shall teach this to your children.
Yes.
And
right.
what is this? The story of Exodus. That's the great unifying, the story of liberation and the escape from Egypt, which is the central story in Jewish tradition, Jewish history, which we are commanded to pass on generation to generation.
Exactly, right.
So there's all this stuff, the 4 questions and the 4 cups of wine, and there's all kinds of
Right.
It's very interesting.
Right. Yes.
But the other thing is, just to get back to the chametz, for those who don't know, during the week of Passover, the Jewish tradition mandates that you are not to eat any kind of leavened bread. So we eat matzah,
Right.
which is unleavened bread, meaning it is flour and water. The mandate is that from the time the water hits the flour to the time it comes out of the oven can be no more than 13 minutes, because after 13 minutes it begins to rise just from the natural
Exactly.
agents in the flour.
Yeah.
And of course, matzah is called, referenced in the Exodus narrative, the bread of our affliction.
Yes.
And do you know why it's called the bread of
Of course
our
I do.
Why
Yes.
is that?
Well, it's because it's all they had to eat during the time.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
but
right.
I
Well,
always-
it's also called that because there wasn't any time to really bake any bread on the way out of Egypt.
That's correct.
Right.
And I always say it's called the bread of affliction because eat it for a week and you tell me what you're afflicted with. Sorry, no disrespect meant or intended. But Passover is a wonderful celebration. We rehearse and relive, and that's really part of the whole story of Passover, is that we relive, in theory,
Yes.
the Exodus from Egypt. Again, it says in every generation, you are to feel as though you yourself went out of Egypt and was led by God out from slavery. And so the first part of the meal is sparse,
Right.
it's limited, which is then contrasted to the second part of the meal, which is plentiful
Yeah.
and
Largesse.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The book that we read during the Passover is called the Haggadah, which means in Hebrew the story. And when I was a kid, my grandfather used to start at 6 o'clock with the first page of the Haggadah, reading the story, and we didn't eat till, if we were lucky, 11:30.
No kidding.
My grandfather, every word, if you read a word wrong in English or read a word wrong in Hebrew, you had to start the page.
Oh, no.
Yes, so that's there are lots of people who have that tradition.
But listen, we do these ceremonies both in synagogue and church and in home
Right.
as an exercise of memory. Memory is a very important part of any kind of religious tradition.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't remember it, well, obviously you forget
That's
it.
correct.
If you forget it, then you have no reason to
That's
commemorate
correct.
it.
And it's as you said, cultural memory.
Yeah, right.
Because the Exodus narrative, and there are, as we've taught Exodus a lot.
Sure.
But there are those who would question the historical veracity, but that's not the issue.
Right.
The issue is it becomes the solidifying story around which the culture has developed.
Absolutely,
The religious
yeah.
tradition
Yeah.
has developed.
Right.
So the first Seder is this Friday night. And that usually takes place in homes. And we will have the second Seder on Tuesday night, April, whatever this coming Tuesday is.
I think it's April 3rd.
I think that the 3rd, yes, April 3rd. And we look forward to all the festivities, the fun, and the enjoyment of of what these holidays bring to the Jewish community. As they say in Hebrew, Chag Kasher LaPesach, may you have a kosher Passover. And to the Christian community, happy, healthy Easter.
Indeed, indeed.
And we will be back, Easton.
We are MCTV, Midshore Community Television. We want your help in making our station more robust so that we can better serve the residents of Talbot County. So, how can you help? If you are already making video content, submit that content for broadcast to the station. It's free! Are you involved in events, shows, or lectures that would be of interest to the community? We can work with you to figure out the best way to capture those events for airing on MCTV, be it training, equipment rental, or hiring our production staff to film at a reasonable rate. Do you want to produce your own show? Let us help you get started. Come be a part of this valuable community resource. Email the station at nick@avalonfoundation.org or visit us in the basement of the historic Avalon Theater at 40 East Dover Street in downtown Easton.
And we are back, and you are seated at the Rabbi's Roundtable. I'm Rabbi Peter Hyman, Rabbi of Temple B'nai Israel, and we are coming to you from the studios of MCTV in the basement of the Avalon Theater. And as you can see, we have one additional guest. You've already heard from my friend and colleague, Bishop Joel Johnson. With me now is Arna Meyer Mickelson. Arna is not only president of Temple, but a resident, was a resident for many years in Washington, D.C., as the director of the D.C. JCC.
Correct.
And glad you're here.
Thank you.
Changing the mood and tone of the segment, I thought it would be important for us to talk a little bit about the march in Washington that just took place last weekend. The power, the import, the message, and the necessity to hear from people who were there. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. I had other obligations here, but both Bishop Johnson and Arna were in attendance, along with several other folk from our community who I invited, but for various reasons couldn't be here as well. So I'm going to start, Arna, with you. Just give us your reaction to the experience, let alone the topic, but just in terms of the experiential reality.
Well, it was a wonderful experience. You start to feel it immediately as you go into the metro station, even in the northern suburbs, and people are just flowing in. You have a sense of the energy of the day. You're reading signs all day, people's messages, and you know for sure at that point that this march that has been planned is going big. And as you get down into the city and Union Station, people are just coming out of the metro in great hordes of people, walking and with good spirit, with their signs, maybe 3/4 of them young people, families with children, but mostly teens, young college students, high school students, and just with enormous energy. And with enormous decorum. I mean, everything was peaceful and respectful and quiet when it needed to be quiet and noisy when it needed to be noisy.
That's really remarkable. That's important.
Yeah, it sure is.
And Joel, I know, Joel, you were there. What?
Well, we arrived actually the day before, and we were going to Alexandria, Virginia, to celebrate my grandson's birthday. So we always drive through the city, going right straight through downtown, so that we saw the physical barriers which were being created in order to prevent, say, a big semi-trailer driving into a crowd, as happened in Spain last year. We also saw the great towers of light being erected and the camera stands being erected. So it was like preparations for a big gala event. And insofar as the event itself is concerned, as you know, because of a modest physical disability that I have, marching is not easy for me.
Right. I know
so that I spent a lot of time really watching faces. And it was beautiful when I saw. I won't say that I've been down on our youth. In fact, I think I've always been pretty up on them. But I've never really realized the depth of their intellectual, of their cultural ethos. I mean, I'm an old NPR broadcaster from way back.
I know that.
If you want to make me cry, play for me a 1910 recording of
Right.
Amelita Galacorci,
Right.
and I'll satisfy you. But listen, they had a couple of performers on stage singing current songs of their day. And looking at these young people in the crowd, they knew these songs.
They did.
Every single set of lips was moving. And I'm looking up on the Jumbotron, and the words aren't there.
Right.
These are songs which they know. So that they're there as a part of their own culture, of the reason that they have perceived for their own existence as, indeed, people have changed. And let me tell you, these are songs which they could not learn simply right after Parkland.
Right.
I was very moved by that. And then the sincerity of the speeches, oh my, well, you want to make me cry right now?
No,
You better take it over.
I will tell you the God's honest truth that I was watching it
Yeah.
on television. I was stunned at the poise,
Yeah,
at the ability that those young people who spoke presented to a huge audience,
yeah,
international.
right.
They were articulate, they were concise, they were on point. And I'm not talking about the merits or lack of merits of the issue. I'm just talking at this point about what was presented, how it was presented, and how they did it.
Right.
And that one young woman, the 11-year-old.
Oh,
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
wonderful.
I-
Truly
Yeah.
wonderful.
We speak for
Yeah.
a living.
yeah.
And I if she wrote that herself, I wanted her to write sermons for me on
right,
Friday night.
yes, right.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
I was concerned a little bit in some of the post commentaries. Some folks saying, at least I may be wrong, but I don't think I am, about the reticence or the displeasure with the concept of free speech and having the kids having the right to do that.
Yeah.
That was disturbing.
That is disturbing.
Well, to
Yeah.
me, it was particularly on the same night. That night, they followed on NBC with a historical piece about the civil rights movement.
Yes.
And so you saw young activists at that time, of which I was one, and
Yotam
it seemed-
Bien, yeah, I was
and
there too.
okay, so it was to me a passing of the baton.
Yes,
That we are now old, and here is a young generation with dynamism and intellect and passion, and more than ready to pick up the mantle and move
Yeah.
forward.
yeah,
So-
yeah.
And that to me was wonderful to
Yes.
see.
Well, that occurred to me at the same time, remembering being in the Freedom School way back in 1964. The camera melts the decades off of me, I know. but I remember being told, you will forget your need to have to be who you are when you are demonstrating in a crowd, because you will have the strength of all those around you.
That's
And
very
I felt that then when marching with Martin and all the hundreds of thousands of other young people then, and seeing it happening all over again on,
Yeah.
on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Do you think that there, and I guess historically we have always underestimated our kids,
Yeah.
but do you think there was even a more pronounced underestimation of these kids that was so totally disproven
Yes.
by the weekend?
Yeah, yeah.
I expect that, in every family, everyone deals with their teenagers and with, shaking their heads at teenage action and whatever, and that the parents, besides pride, were just blown away
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
abilities of
Yeah.
their own children and their friends,
Yeah.
and the abilities that being able to be online and to communicate around the world, it really gave them what they needed to make this happen.
Yes, indeed. And when we remember our kids, let us remember who those kids were who stood outside the Colonial Massachusetts
Yes.
State House in Boston, who were gunned down and whose martyrdom began the American Revolution.
You're right. And so often I think we think this is a negative.
Yeah.
Because I'm lucky I can get this to work, let alone do what it's supposed to
I
do.
left mine in the car for
Yeah.
fear it would ring.
Well, that too. But they use it differently.
Yeah, they do.
And obviously, my perception of technology is totally off base. For me, it's right on, but it's a different world and a different generation.
Yeah.
And they utilize this in a way that is not disenfranchising, but it is totally connecting for them.
Right.
Right.
You-
So now
you-
we have to wait and hope that the energy is sustained, that they have picked up enormous new partners from other generations, and that we move together
Yeah,
forward.
Yeah. And you were with your grandchildren, right?
I was with a granddaughter
Oh, how
and a
wonderful.
daughter, so
How
three
wonderful.
generations,
Oh, that's
which
great.
is nice. And
That's
another
great.
granddaughter was there with friends, so
Oh, How
which
lovely.
was lovely.
How lovely.
Well, I again, where you stand on the issue is not for me at the moment so as important as the legitimacy of what we experienced and the burgeoning of yet a new generation taking advantage of what we are given within our Constitution, within our democracy, within the framework of what it means to be an American. And
that's
I think I was very concerned with the comments that said they should be back. Somebody said they should be back doing in school in the
Yeah,
classrooms doing I don't know who it was.
The
But I found-
sanctimonious, some
Yeah.
former senator, yeah.
Maybe
Santorum.
Santorum. Yes,
Oh,
Rick, yeah,
right,
Santorum.
Rick Santori.
Rick
Yeah.
Santorum.
Yeah.
I found it to be
Insulting.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
insulting. I don't think I've ever been in a crowd of over almost 1 million people.
It's quite something.
Yeah, it's,
And actually, when I pulled out to start my path back to Union Station to return north, people were still coming in huge numbers. I sat on a wall on the side of a building for a few minutes to rest, and they just were coming from everywhere. It was really something to see.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
I thought it was not only important in terms of the issue that is being addressed, but also it was a very healthy statement for the country to see and to experience and to recognize that we indeed still have the ability and the vision
Yeah.
to respond and to be able to organize on that kind of level.
Sure.
I'm so glad
Yeah.
that you guys were
Yeah.
there. As I said, there were a lot of folk from the community who
Yes.
were there. I know.
We saw friends down there from the congregation,
Well,
which was amazing to
well,
run into
great.
people.
That shows you that
Yeah.
there's no
great.
place to hide
Yeah.
in this world. I know.
This is true.
I had invited Assistant District Attorney Ellen Grunden to be here. She couldn't, but she was there, and just a myriad of other folk. Rabbi Don Berlin, who's been at the Rabbi's
great.
Roundtable,
Yeah.
and others, and the diversity, the depth of folk who were there, really was quite ameliorating for me, and
Yes.
uplifting and
Yes.
energizing.
Right.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to respond to a comment that you made about 3 minutes ago about the validity of these young people doing what they were doing and other people trying to take their qualifications away from them
Yes.
for getting to do so. And it made me think, how old does one need to be to claim one's birthright as a citizen of the United States? How old does one need to be to say, I am an American?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then I have a voice.
Yeah, and I have a voice.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And that was, go ahead.
In some article somewhere that I saw that they listed the ages of earlier presidents and writers of independence, and they were 20 and 18 and
Yeah,
22.
wow.
So they themselves, the leaders of our earlier colonial country, were young men at that point.
Yeah.
And I think we tend to, perhaps as we grow older, our tunnel vision becomes more narrow in terms of who has a voice, whose voice is legitimate to listen
Sure.
to.
Yeah.
But I really was. I was moved to tears. I was really taken aback by the poise and the posture of these young people.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a remarkably positive statement
What?
about what the future holds.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Oh,
you're welcome.
yeah.
I just have one
Yes,
more
sir.
thing that I would
Yes.
like to do before we go off the air. Happy birthday.
Oh.
You and I have been together for 10 years, causing trouble, And you and I have done 14 seminars together.
Yes, we have.
And we've been on this show innumerable times as I've been your guest. And just a little something for you to enjoy
I will
during
listen
Passover.
to
These
it.
are string quartets by Erno Dochnani
Yep.
and by Zoltan Kodayi,
Yep.
a Christian and a Jew, written during times of mutual peril during the 1930s.
Thank you.
And I hope that you will enjoy it. The artists are
I
wonderful.
will listen to it tonight. Thank you very
Enjoy,
much.
enjoy.
And Arna, thank you for
Thank
being
you.
at the Rabbi's
Of
Roundtable.
course.
Bishop, thank you. Pretty interesting show today, I think. I hope our comments have given you pause and given you food for thought. And I wish everybody a happy Easter, a good Passover, and that the last comment, by the way, the holiday of Passover in the book of Exodus is called the springtime holiday. Hopefully we will get springtime soon.
We remember it.
Yes. We will be back next time on the Rabbi's Roundtable. Easton, thanks for tuning in.